Welcome to today's fifth webinar in our series of webinars on the Overseas Trade Fairs Participation Program. Welcome to all. Today we will go over the upcoming trade fairs for which the program is still accepting applications and give you an overview of the process to apply, but also what you can expect in terms of the missions to these trade fairs. My name is Jean-Jacques Lennon, and I'm managing the Overseas Trade Fairs team and supported in that by Margot Buquet and Laura Doumbouya, who are with me here. And we will also have some external speakers supporting us and providing insights, in particular on Asia Water Expo. That will be Vicky Tan from UBM Malaysia and Evan Schiff from Spintelligent in South Africa for African Utility Week. The agenda for today's webinar between 10 and 11 this morning is to start with a welcome and overall program presentation, which I'll do over the next few minutes. We'll then have Margot take us through the Overseas Trade Fairs experience from the application process through to the timeline for preparing and taking part in the trade fair mission, and then the follow-up, which we do after that. We'll then go into a little more detail on the two specific missions for which deadlines are upcoming towards the end of this year and beginning of next year, and those are Asia Water Expo in Malaysia, which will be presented by Vicky Tan from UBM Malaysia, and African Utility Week presented by Evan Schiff from Spintelligent in South Africa. We'll then briefly cover the other overseas trade fairs for which applications are still accepted, and then have a question and answer session to go over any points that may have come up in the minds of attendees today. Feel free to type in your questions as we go. You have a little box on the right-hand side of your screen in which you can do that. We will then either try to answer them as we go through the session or do that at the end of the session during the questions and answer section. We will briefly pause perhaps at the end of each section just for a quick check on whether there are questions from the attendees. And you are all by default muted just to avoid background noise, but we'll obviously unmute you for the Q&A. So in terms of the overall Overseas Trade Fairs program, it is intended as part of the EU's initiatives to support European small and medium-sized enterprises in their efforts to innovate and create jobs and growth for the EU. In particular, it will aim to take up to 225 SMEs from the SME instrument, i.e. SMEs who have been granted under phases 1 or 2 of the SME instrument, to 15 international trade fairs around the world in 11 different countries outside of the EU. And those are the US, Chile, Nigeria, South Africa, the UAE, India, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Japan, and China, as you see highlighted on the map here. That program, the Overseas Trade Fairs program, fits into the SME instrument as the third phase after phases 1 and 2, the idea being that companies, or SMEs in particular, who have been supported with their business plan under phase 1 or with demonstration market replication or upscaling projects under phase 2, and granted under those 2 phases, can then be supported in terms of their business acceleration or commercialization of their technologies and innovations. And essentially, the Overseas Trade Fairs program is one of several different services provided in this phase 3 under what is now called the Business Acceleration Services, which also includes big events, the Academy, financial partnership events, business partnering events with corporates, online matchmaking, and more generally the SME instrument community. So you see that the Overseas Trade Fairs is nicely integrated into the overall SME instrument. Now, in terms of the selection of the target markets specifically for the various missions, the idea is essentially that a vast majority of global economic growth that is forecast for the next few years is expected outside of Europe. And so to allow European SMEs to leverage that growth, that projected growth, the idea behind the program is to support the SMEs in entering these markets with EU support providing that entry door, an entry path into the various markets in which we see significant growth potential. And you see some of the growth rates on the slide here in terms of obviously Asia in particular, but also the US, Latin America, and parts of Africa expected to have higher growth than generally is present in the EU. Now, the specific objectives of the Overseas Trade Fairs program are to help SMEs to scale up and reach new geographical markets, as we've seen on the previous slides. Also to increase their visibility on the international scene, the idea being that by attending trade fairs in these overseas markets, SMEs are raising their visibility, but also increasing their knowledge of these foreign markets, understanding the opportunities there are for them in these markets, preparing for business deals, ideally signing those in the period following the trade fairs or even at the trade fairs for the luckiest amongst them. The trade fairs that have been selected are spread across the globe as we've seen in the previous slides. They are major international trade fairs, some of which are sectoral, others are cross-sectoral. You'll see that in the next slides. Now, on this slide, what you can see is that a number of the trade fairs have already taken place, those that are not highlighted or bolded, whereas others are upcoming for 2018, and those are bolded on the slide here. The next slide also shows a similar view over time of the distribution of the trade fairs which will be attended by the program over 2017 and 2018. As you can see, we have so far attended 7 different trade fairs in 2017. All of which have been great successes for the SME participants taking part. We'll have a few details on that in the next slide or two. And then 8 trade fairs projected in 2018, the first 3 of which are now closed for applications, and we are preparing those missions with the selected participants. But the other 5 that you see remain open for applications. The only detail being that Metalex has had a first deadline and will likely be reopened for a few additional applications in the coming period. Just to briefly highlight some of the missions to date and give you a sense of the nature of those, a few pictures of the various pavilions and groups of SMEs that we have brought to FOE, MIHAS, IE Expo, Bio and Tech Innovation are presented on this slide with 86 SMEs from around the EU and Europe more broadly participating in those various missions. And obviously 1,000+ B2B meetings set up for all of these companies. That is the core of the missions. Our intent is to put you in touch directly with relevant counterparts during the trade fairs that take place in these various geographies. And you see here a picture of a B2B meeting taking place on one of the pavilions at GITEX, but also to allow pitching opportunities. You see here a picture of one of the SMEs pitching at Tech Innovation in Singapore, and naturally, as said, to raise awareness and visibility of the SMEs with media coverage, interviews, etc. So with that, I think I've covered the introduction to the program, and I'll now let Margot walk us through the Overseas Trade Fairs experience.
Yes, indeed. I'll now walk you through the OTF experience. So to start with, here's an overview of your participation process timeline. The first step is the submission of your application Once done, it will be evaluated by our evaluation body, and each of you will receive a selection letter. A notification letter will select 15 companies, 5 will be waitlisted, and each of you will receive a notification letter. Once selected, we'll ask you to fill in a participation form, which will help us build our promotional material and confirm your participation to our pre-departure briefing held in Brussels. Right after that, we'll start our promotion and our matchmaking process for you to be held during the trade fair in the target region. We'll also come with you to the mission in the target market, and once the mission is done, we'll help you follow up with your contacts and also help you evaluate the economic impact of the mission for your company. How to apply? There are multiple ways to find the application link. You can browse our website, the OTF page on the SME website, where you'll find links that that help you find the application portal. But also you can find the application forms directly when filling in, when using this link on the internet. Please also monitor our communications, either on our ESME webpage, but also on LinkedIn and Twitter, where you find more information about the deadlines and the link to the application forms. Who are we looking for? So we are looking for phase 1 and phase 2 SME instrument companies, which have a signed grant agreement by the date of the application deadline with a global international business strategy. We have 3 criteria to evaluate and select our participants. First of all, by order of importance, we have the impact, the level of impact your participation will have on your business, but also the fit with the trade fair and the target market is also of high importance. And finally, we will also look into the human resources and the financial resources you have to complete the business mission. So as mentioned before, each of you will receive a letter. We'll select between 10 and 15 companies to each trade fairs, and 5 will be waitlisted. What does the OTF program offers to selected SMEs? First of all, you'll have a free booth on the European Pavilion, approximately 5 square meters, but also we'll help you with the business matchmaking. We'll set up up to 15 business meetings for you to take place at the trade fair, depending on your expectations. It also will help you with your company promotion before and at the trade fair. We'll also organize for you a networking reception to help you network with your newly made contacts, but also look into a pitching session, either organized by the trade fair itself or by ourselves. We'll also cover optional services. These are partially reimbursed under our program. I'll cover this now in the next slide. So the OTF program covers 15% of your expenses up to €1,000 for selected eligible costs. These cover travel and accommodation to the trade fair and at the trade fair, but also additional value-added services such as consulting, printing, and customization of your booth. We also would like to highlight the human resources needed for this participation. You'll find on the slide the different figures, and please take those into consideration when applying to the event.
Thanks for that overview of the experience, Marco. So we will have Vicky Tan presenting the Asia Water Expo fair in Malaysia now. Perhaps, Vicky, before you start, I'll just give a brief overview of the Southeast Asian market that the program looks at through this trade fair. Obviously, the Asia Water Expo takes place in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, but the intent of bringing European SMEs to Malaysia is also to look more broadly at the Southeast Asian and ASEAN region. And ASEAN consists of 10 countries who have formed a partnership since 1995, including Malaysia, but also Thailand, Cambodia, Singapore, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Brunei, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And that is a region with a population roughly equivalent to that of the EU, slightly higher in fact, and a GDP that is growing significantly quicker than that of the EU as a whole. Now, Malaysia in particular belongs to the upper middle income group of countries in Southeast Asia. And what you see on the graph here is an overview of both GDP per capita, but also the growth of GDP per capita, the growth rates expected. And here you can see that Malaysia fits into, as said, the upper middle income group of countries along with Thailand, in that its growth rate is significant, but it is starting from a reasonable base, just below the average in the EU. So obviously significant opportunities in the Malaysian market and the broader regional market to be grasped by European SMEs. And key sectors in Malaysia include obviously services, accounting for about 44% of GDP, but also in industry with nearly 40% of GDP as well. So with that short introduction, I'll then hand over to Vicky Tan from UBM to walk us through the Asia Water Expo 2018 and cover any related points for that fair.
Thank you, Jim. Hi everyone, this is Vicky Tan. I'm from UBM, the Senior Project Manager for Asia Water. Like what Jin said earlier, Malaysia is actually up and rising and is the hub for all companies coming into Asia market, especially for water and wastewater companies. So let me just go through with everyone for Asia Water. Asia Water was established over 14 years ago in year 2000, where the show is growing steadily year after year. Next year, we will be celebrating our 10th anniversary, and this event will be held from 10 to 12 of April 2018 at Kuala Lumpur Convention Center, right beside the iconic Twin Tower of Malaysia. Asia Water is a biannual event and is expected to welcome over 15,000 trade visitors and attendees from 48 countries to the show. This is the largest water and wastewater industry event in this region, with over 60 free-to-attend seminars and conferences presenting topics on water policy and governance, technologies and solutions, case studies, and wastewater management and resources. This year, the conference theme is Partnership for Growth and a Sustainable Future. And this free-to-attend Asia Water Conference is fully supported by the Department of Irrigation and Drainage Malaysia, DID, under the direction of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental. Asia Water is expected to receive over 14 international and regional pavilions from Austria, Bavaria, China, Denmark, Germany, Korea, Singapore, Switzerland, State of Illinois, Taiwan, Thailand, the Netherlands, Water Environment Federation, WEF, from the States, and also for the first time, the participation from the EU Pavilion. The top visitors who are expected to attend the show are from the water companies and operators, environment and civil engineering consultants, agents and distributors, the ministries and from the governments, petrochemicals, oil and gas, building contractors, food, drinks, beverages, and palms and sugar refineries. We are all inviting the companies under water productions, green water technologies, irrigations, water treatment system, pumps and valves, pipes and turbines, water resources management, and wastewater treatment companies to exhibit at Asia Water 2018. This is the leading water and wastewater event in Asia, which you should not miss. For more information on how to participate as an exhibitor, please contact Jean or Laura from Deloitte, or you may also visit our website at www.asiawater.org. And we are very happy to answer any questions if you have any after this webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Jean.
Thanks for that, Vicky. Thanks for the brief introduction to the Asia Water Expo. Maybe just to highlight to our audience some of the main expected players, and I think you did walk us through the different industries and their representation. But perhaps could you give us some insights into how regional and open to the global presence this trade fair is? I think you highlighted there would be a number of international pavilions. Do you also expect international delegations and at governmental level, etc., from around the ASEAN region to attend?
Well, this is a very good point raised, Jean. In fact, as most of you are aware, we are organizing 5 water series exhibitions in Asia. So Asia Water being the largest event that we organize, is like a mother show for all the water series that we are having. So on top of that, we are working very closely with all our other local supporting partners from other ASEAN regions, which is from the Philippines, Thailand, Myanmar, Vietnam, and also in Singapore. Yes. So for this event next year, we will be inviting the associations from the water association, and also from the government ministries and also the municipals to visit the show. So some of them will be acting like a speaker and also coming in groups for this event.
Indeed, thanks for that update, Vicky. And then I think worth highlighting for our audience that we will work together with you to create opportunities for European SMEs attending to present in various technical seminars, etc., to the extent that is feasible and relevant. So perhaps do you have a small view on some of the topics of these technical seminars upcoming that are planned for 2018 already, or can you instruct us on how and when that will be decided?
Well, okay. For the event next year, we have technical seminar, which is presented by our exhibitors. So for companies who wish to present about the technology's know-how, they are given 30 minutes complimentary slot on a first-come, first-served basis during the show. And on top of that, as I mentioned earlier, we also organize the conference, a free-to-attend conference with our supporting partners from the Malaysia Water Association, from International Water Association, and also other regions from Asia. And the key topics that we are focusing for next year would be on water futures partnership, efficient and sustainable water services, and also the water policies and governance. So all these conferences topic we will be putting up on our website very soon, which should be on December next month, where you can also log in to see the list of the speakers and the invited expert slide speakers as well for these sessions.
Excellent. Thanks, Vicky, for those insights into Asia Water Expo 2018, and we certainly look forward to working together on that. So with that, we can turn now to the second trade fair that we're putting forward here on today's webinar, which is African Utility Week, that will take place in Cape Town in South Africa in May next year from 15th to 17th. And we have Evan Schiff from Spintelligent to present an overview of the trade fair to us. Again, before turning to Evan, I'll just briefly present a slide with some numbers on the EU's relation with South Africa. So obviously, South Africa is the EU's first trading partner in Africa, the largest trading partner for the EU on the continent. It's a large country with 55 million population and a very young population, and significant growth obviously expected in the country. And I think you can see on this slide a breakdown in terms of the various sectors represented in the country's economy. So with that, Evan, I will turn to you for a brief overview of the African Utility Week.
Thank you, Jean-Jacques. Please let me know if anybody has difficulty hearing. I am Evan Schiff. I'm the event director for African Utility Week, which, as Jean-Jacques said, is taking place in May next year. And African Utility Week is our flagship show here at Intelligent, where we draw on 4 regional shows that we run throughout Africa, in Central Africa, in East Africa, the East African region, West Africa in Nigeria, and then in Uganda as well. And our experience and activities on the continent and also from our publishing arm allow us to gather together from all of those shows a very good representation from the African power and water public sector buy side, coming down to Cape Town in May every year. I wonder if I can, how do I go to the next, can you move to the next slide? Thank you. So why African Utility Week? As I mentioned, it's the premier meeting place for the entire power, energy and water value chain, and 2018 will be our 18th year of operation. At the show, by having the ability to gather such a wide representation, it really allows us to have some very in-depth conversations. So as a supplier to the sector, you can come in and not only find your legal and your consultants, financiers there as well, but also having a talk to the talk to the final end customers. So either your municipalities or your utilities that are working in that space, or your EPCs and developers that are looking at doing projects within sub-Saharan Africa and on the continent. So it really does provide you that opportunity to connect with those key decision makers and to have the conversations you need to have, as well as coming from the European Union. If you're looking for you're either supplier to industry or looking for local distributors or partners, obviously we have over 300 exhibitors on the show floor as well, and they are there for and open to these conversations as well. Some of our research we've got here, our top reasons why people attend African Utility Week. So you can see there we've got a very high representation to learn about the latest technologies, becoming familiar with new products and services, and really you can see there, find out those specific informations and to connect. So we are a recognized show for these connections, and somewhere where people come year after year in order to carry that through. Next slide, please. So what we've got here is our key statistics from our most recent event in May, just to give you an idea of where we're coming from. Those 570,000 business connections, that's looking at the amount of connections coming from all of our attendees and the meetings, the networking sessions, and all the conferencing sessions that go on. Over 21 hours of networking and 210 plus hours of content. As I said, we gather about 7,500 people to the event over 3 days from approximately 90 countries, 300 exhibitors, over 280 expert speakers, and we have a dedicated business matchmaking system which is live managed. So in the lead up to the event, as an exhibitor and as delegates, you get a free profile that you upload your business information, and from that system you get to, it will match you to your expected profile, to your intended audience. So it assigns a score to every individual, and from there it matches and it gives you suggestions, and then you can reach out and make meetings from that system. So really very good way of doing connections. And we do have live operators that man that system as well, that can assist you to get answers and can assist you in confirming meetings in the lead up to and on site once you are actually at the event. This is actually our second year with the European Commission. We also hosted the official matchmaking pavilion for the Business Beyond Borders program, which was last year's program. So we're very happy to be once again part of the European Commission's activities in Africa. We've got an industry awards and of course 66 utilities from 20 African countries. Sorry, we can go to the next slide, please. So as I said, for our research, this is just to show that a high majority of our attendees actually want to come. They recommend the show to their colleagues. So we do have that trust within the industry, which of course, if you're considering where to spend your time, where to invest your time, where to invest your money in a show, you want to show that people trust and you know that people are going to be coming back to. So these just show from our on-site research the high level of trust that the audience has in our show, as well as that 64% figure showing that attendees to our event actually have buying power, so are either part of the final decision-making group or the final decision makers themselves. So obviously we're very proud of these statistics. Next slide, please. So just to give you a quick overview of what actually happens, what makes up the event in 2018, we have got 4 main components of the event. Our exhibition, as I said, on the exhibition floor, I'll go into it in the next slide, but the exhibition floor is broken up into sectors. So we've got transmission, distribution, and metering. We've got the digital utility, which is all the ICT management systems for utilities as they modernize, things like cybersecurity, network connections, and big data and big data management. That fits very comfortably there. And then we're expanding into 2 new halls that they've just built at the convention center in South Africa. We'll have over 14,000 square meters of gross exhibition space next year. And in those new halls, we'll have a dedicated water hall, and we'll also have our generation hall covering all sectors of generation. As well as on the exhibition floor, we've got free to attend technical workshops that are covering a variety of subjects, asset management and maintenance, as I said, generation. We've got a Nuclear Power Africa dedicated focus day. We've got a project village where we will be having different African countries stand up and talking about the projects that they are planning over the short to medium term, and of course why the benefits of coming to work within those particular countries. So really just providing you with a way as coming into the continent. African Utility Week provides you with that one-stop shop to meet and connect with people in the industry and to also learn about the market and where you should be focusing your attention and how you can go further. So that's on the exhibition side. In terms of the content, as I said, we've got the free to attend technical workshops. We've also got a full 6-track strategic conference, and that'll be covering topics such as transmission, distribution, metering, revenue cycle management, finance and investment, generation, what else we got? Energy Revolution Africa. So that's looking at for our commercial and industrial market. How do you do small scale embedded generation? What is energy storage going to do? And how do you work with wheeling and feed-in tariffs? As I said, as utilities modernize, these are very important points for the African energy market, the African energy sector. We've also got site visits that happen on the Friday, on the 18th of May. And these we have 6 different sites around Cape Town where we will take delegates to either a water installation, to a facility of the city of Cape Town, to Robben Island. They've just done a solar power installation for the whole of Robben Island. And then we'll go to a wine farm and have a little bit of sightseeing around Cape Town. Likewise, from our networking points of view, we have the B2B matchmaking I spoke about earlier, cocktail functions, we've got women in power luncheons, breakfasts. So we really try and create multifaceted opportunities for you to connect with an audience, both formally and informally. And we've also got a Black Tie Gala dinner, our industry awards, which will be taking place for the 4th time next year. And this is really just a chance to celebrate the successes for the sub-Saharan African power and water sectors, where we can honor them a little bit. As I said, our co-located events, we're working with the African Utilities Technology Council. They are the African arm of the Global Utility Technology Council, and that is focusing on the digital utility and all these ICT and utility modernization practices. Nuclear Power Africa that I mentioned. We've got a dedicated finance and investment forum to talk about how projects are financed and to provide that platform for financiers, for project developers, for EPCs, and for the final end users, governments, municipalities, utilities, to discuss the latest trends in funding. We'll be hosting a gas to power congress, looking specifically in the gas to power sector with a partner of ours. And then water, as I said, we all are partnering with the Water Research Commission which is the official South African body. It's a state-owned entity that looks at all of the water research and helps guide government policy on the sector. So that should provide some very interesting content. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So I know hopefully you've got a little bit more time. Just to show you very quickly, the buy-side industries represented, developers, contractors, EPCs, those utilities, the consultants. And with regard to the utilities, we try and attract as many of the different departments as we can. So we'll have a dedicated CEO forum for C-suite executives to have behind closed doors Chatham House meetings with their peers. And then also, of course, with the various strategists, the asset management people, the generation, the planning people, your revenue people, the metering program. So we really try and get as diverse and broad an audience as possible in order to create as many touch points as possible across the sector. Consultants are large power users. As I said, we focus on that, the new power market. So as large power users are looking to maybe get off the grid and start doing their own generation, start bringing in energy efficiency procedures, we really try and provide a good amount of content and a good amount of technology on the show floor to assist them in doing that. Municipality, government regulators, financial, and then other as our main levels. 12% C-level MD or board members, 15% head of business unit division, and of course 21% a manager. So as I said, we really look at having both those decision makers and then for free to attend on the show floor, your technical managers, the guys at the coalface, so to speak, that you can have those discussions with them. Next slide, please. This very quickly is our breakdown. As I mentioned, our 4 sectors, the T&D metering, our utilities, generation and water. As you can see there, that's CTRCC1. Those are the 4 main halls that we have been in, and we were outgrowing those halls. And the new expansion, they've doubled the capacity of the convention center. That just opened now last month. So next year we will be going across into those halls as well. We're very excited about that. And let's just give you an idea of the exhibitor sectors from through generation, T&D, metering technologies, and water. As I said, we are very wide. We cover the full value chain. I won't go into the detail now. I think I've been going on a little bit. Sorry, just last slide there. Okay, again, just a quick breakdown of some of our regular attendees. We'll be having international pavilions coming from France, Belgium, Finland, India, China, Turkey, Russia. So again, we have some very good international attendance, and we are part of a Global Utility Week series that's run by Clarion Events, which is our parent company, that we do utility weeks in Australia, China, launching next year, Asia, that runs out of Singapore, Latin America and Brazil, and the European Utility Week, which next year will be in Austria, in Vienna. And then I have put in the next slide the more detailed floor plans. I won't go into these in too much detail, but again, I'll be available for questions afterwards if anyone has anything. And Jean-Jacques, thank you. I've taken up, I think, a little bit too much of your time, but thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. Thanks, Evan. That was very insightful in giving the audience a view into the opportunities at African Utility Week. Thanks again for that. So turning now to the other overseas trade fairs missions, which are still open for applications. I'll very briefly go through those. Just to give you a flavor of what is still available as an SME from the SME instrument in terms of missions for 2018. The first of those is Electronica and Productronica in India. That will take place in Bangalore in 2018, and that is a big trade fair that has been going on now since the year 2000, is the leading platform in electronics and related areas within India. If we go to the next slide, it covers cables and connectors, PCBs, semiconductors, so that's really the Electronica part, and then EMS, SMT, test and measurement systems in the Productronica part. And in terms of international presence there, as we've heard for the 2 other trade fairs presented Asia Water Expo and African Utility Week, there are also international country pavilions from China, Germany, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, and the UK, for instance, in 2017, and obviously numerous regional Indian pavilions. So it's a very large trade fair with various components. So some of the program elements from 2017 are indicated on this slide. Now those will obviously evolve for 2018, where the program is in the making, but as you can see, a lot of thematic conferences and a supporting program which involves the governmental side from India, as well as certain industries. The automotive and avionics for embedded systems was a key highlight from 2017. Obviously, that is a big trade fair, and that will take place, as said, in September 2018. Applications are open for a while longer into 2018. Another fair that remains open for applications under the Overseas Trade Fairs program is the China International Industry Fair, taking place from 6th to 12th November 2018. That, again, is a very large fair with over 2,500 exhibitors back in 2016. Figures aren't out yet for this year's edition, which has just taken place as well, but are expected to be slightly above that, and obviously for 2018 will yet again be increasing, perhaps rising to even the 3,000 mark or so. And as you see here on the slide, 168,000 visitors in 2016. Again, that will be expected to rise a bit by 2018. But so a very, very large trade fair with 9 thematic shows under a single roof. You have metalworking and CNC, machine tool, industrial automation, environmental protection technology and equipment, information and communication technology, energy, new energy, robotics, scientific and technological innovation, and then the China aerospace and aviation technology sector. So very broad, ranging from metalworking and machine tools through to environmental and energy related sectors, through to robotics and aerospace as well. And we will be, of course, accepting applications from SMEs across these different sectors within the SME instrument. So that's the China International Industry Fair, and that again takes place from 6th to 12th November 2018, with applications open until roughly middle of the year. We'll have a slide presenting the deadlines a little later in this presentation. Next up is Metalex. We have closed the first phase of applications for this trade fair, but do expect to open or reopen it early in 2018 for a couple of additional applications. So for any SMEs from the instrument who are interested in attending Metalex, which is covering metalworking and machine tools as well, there are likely to be a number of spots available opening up early in 2018 for applications, again until approximately middle of the year is the current expectation. Metalex will take place in November 2018. It's the current year's edition is upcoming now from 22nd to 25th, so next week, and is again a very large trade fair with 9 exhibition halls in Bangkok in Thailand to cover the trade fair, 64,000 square meters of exhibition space, with, as is shown on the slide, machine tools being the largest, but various components included, ranging from an international pavilion through to certain more specific thematic areas in the trade fair. If we look at the visitorship of Metalex 2016, obviously numbers are not known yet for 2017, but are expected to rise versus 2016. That's roughly 90,000 plus visitors for 2016, with a breakdown presented here: about 61% manufacturers, OEMs, 25% distributors, 11% others, and 3% government or state enterprises. So a broad range of visitors from different fields of activity in terms of job functions, and similarly in terms of their interest in either manufacturing, tools and tooling, machine tools and metalworking, molds and dies, welding, etc. So again, a very large trade fair taking place in Bangkok in Thailand in November next year for the overseas trade fairs participation to it, and we will likely be reopening applications early 2018 for this trade fair. So the next slide has an overview of the deadlines for applying to these various trade fairs that have been presented today. Our first focus is, of course, on Asia Water Expo and African Utility Week, for which the deadlines are respectively 1st of December for Asia Water Expo. So that is upcoming very soon. So if you are interested in that particular trade fair, please do launch your application process as soon as you can. Our team is, of course, here present to support you in that process with any questions, advice, and support as needed. And then for African Utility Week, the application deadline is the 16th of January next year. So given the holiday period that is upcoming, the work on that should also be done very soon. If you intend to apply, do start that as soon as you can, so that we can again support you in the process of applying. And we hope that today's presentations by Vicky Tan of UBM for Asia Water Expo and Evan Schiff of Spintelligent for African Utility Week have given you nice insights into the opportunities there. Should you have other questions, please don't hesitate to contact us, and we can go through a couple of those in the Q&A shortly, but please don't hesitate also to contact us after this webinar, just to get additional support and insights as needed for your applications. We also have here the deadlines presented for Electronica and Productronica. That is the 19th of May next year, so a little more time there if you do want to consider the opportunity and look through that in more detail. For China International Industry Fair, the application deadline is 10th of July next year. Again, the fair taking place in November, and we expect a similar deadline for the additional applications to Metalex once that is reopened early next year. So with that, we have covered today's content. I thank you for your participation in the webinar thus far, and I'll perhaps open the floor to any questions from our audience. I'm not sure that we've received any in written format during the presentations, so for anyone who is attending, you'll now be unmuted, and feel free to ask your questions now on any of the sections of the presentation. We'll do our best to answer them directly, and if not, we'll come back to you shortly after the webinar. Any questions? Any questions from the audience?
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hey, hi, my name is Jonathan, and I'm representing a startup from Stockholm. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Great. I would just like to check first of all if the slides will be available for download, perhaps on a website, or will it be sent by email? Because I believe there's a lot of
They will,
important.
indeed, the slides will be sent by email to all participants of the webinar. So you will have all that information electronically as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, if at this stage there are no questions, we've had a couple of questions typed in. The first question, which I think has come in from Royce and McCormack, is in terms of advice on narrowing down which trade fair would be best for your company. Well, what I would suggest is to take that discussion offline, and perhaps we've taken note of it, and based on the sector of your company and your focus in terms of markets that you've been looking at, we can then discuss what would be the best target trade fair. Then we have another question in terms of is there a joint stand for the SMEs at African Utility Week? So the principle of the overseas trade fairs is that we always bring 10 to 15 European SMEs from the SME instrument on a single pavilion. But each SME on the pavilion has its own individual booth within the pavilion. So we can provide a picture to you of and I think earlier in the presentation we had a couple of photos of booths, but they may not have been very clear. Essentially, as a participant, you can expect an individual booth of around 5 square meters within the overall pavilion as an individual space for your company. And the idea behind it is that it's an open island style pavilion, which fits nicely within the trade fair and gives an overall EU branding and quality stamp and label to all of the participants on the EU pavilion. So in terms of how competitive the process is, that depends on the different fairs. Some of the trade fairs attract more interest than others. It is in general indeed a competitive process, but our team is here to guide you through that and provide support and advice in terms of the application process and help you to put your best foot forward in terms of how you're applying. So as long as the fit of your company with the trade fair is a good one in terms of the sector that is covered and in terms of you having a high chance of a good impact at the trade fair and being able to dedicate sufficient resources, then you stand a good chance of being selected to the trade fair. In terms of the time it takes for applications to come together, the answer is not so straightforward. I think the application form is not a very complicated one, but of course you do need to put together a case in terms of why your SME in particular would benefit from attending the trade fair. So it would be expected to take you know, an hour or so at least of your time to do the background checking, gather the relevant information, and enter the application. Obviously, then our team is here to support you in that process, and we will try and make it as smooth a process as possible, but naturally, as one can expect, what you get out of this overseas trade fairs process depends on what you put into it. to it. And so we are looking for SMEs that are willing to invest time and effort, because at the end of the day, going to these distant markets and trade fairs involves time and effort for your company, but in particular, if you do want to ultimately do business in Malaysia or Southeast Asia or in South Africa or Africa more broadly, you will need to dedicate time and effort to those particular initiatives. So I think with that, we have covered the questions that were sent in written format. I thank you once again for your participation in the webinar today. I hope we've been able to bring some relevant insights to those of you looking to apply or considering it. Please don't hesitate once more to contact us via our various communication channels, which are on the slide here. And again, the slide deck will be sent to you so you can go over that in your own time and then come back with any questions. Our team, again, is here to support you in the full process. So with that, I'll close today's webinar. Once again, thank Vicky Tan and Evan Schiff for their participations, and look forward to supporting the SMEs who attended in your journey with the overseas trade fairs. Thanks again. Have a good day. Bye-bye.